Today we're going to explore the exciting outer reaches of projects that suck. And, of course, knee-jerk reactions, like, why are we even talking about that? Is that even the point of the show? Does that have anything to do with anything that I want to have anything to do with? I get all those questions, but I think all of us at some point will experience or go through a project that initially we were inspired by or wanted to work on, maybe by our choice, maybe by invitation, maybe because there's just money involved and potentially a lot of money involved. We say yes, and this is how life works. Like, people talk about selling out, and it's like, yeah, isn't that the point, though, in a way, to get to a point where you can sell out? Like, at least have the choice, right? Maybe you have independent income supporting you otherwise, so you don't have to take the gig that you don't want to take or make the jingle that you don't want to make or whatever it is. But isn't that the idea? Isn't that the point? Isn't that where you want to get to? So anyway, you're going to make your decisions and you're going to do your best. We all do. Like, even if you think you're the kind of person that consistently makes bad decisions, don't worry about it, because you're really not alone when it comes to this stuff. And as someone, recovering sensitive creative, not that there's anything wrong with being a sensitive creative. I think I've hardened a little bit more over the years, and for me that's been a good thing. But if you go through life being a sensitive creative, I'm definitely not saying there's anything wrong with that. And I've covered this stuff in detail in one of my books, Flashes of Elation, talking about this very thing of being a sensitive creative and what that means, and the struggles and the challenges and the discoveries that you have along the way. So you're going to choose projects. That's just a fact of life. You might have the assumption that you're going to do the same thing forever, but chances are not. And if you have yet to choose a single project that didn't suck, or if you have yet to choose a single project that does suck, believe you me, you will at some point. So, to me at least, one of the important factors in all of this is your integrity and your character. But let me get to that. Let me back up and talk about the current situation. So I certainly have enough going on in my life without taking on any kind of side project. That is to say, some of it is because I have the contract at Big Tech, and some of that is by choice, building things like Spark Infinity, which has been great. And building Spark Infinity has been incredibly rewarding, and it continues to grow. So a lot of positives there, a lot of good reasons to continue doing that, and it's fulfilling in many ways, and it's an opportunity to serve and also to benefit from the act of actually serving and helping and supporting others. So that's a good project. Does it have its challenges? Yeah, but the thing is, the overall atmosphere, the overall environment is a good one. And so it continues to be that unless somehow that environment, that atmosphere, that particular corner gets poisoned by something. So stepping into another side project, I did it because I'm supporting a friend and have supported her for multiple quarters now. Also because it has to do with the education system. I'm one of those people who believes the education system should be much better than it is. I believe that teachers should be among the highest paid professions. Assuming that we actually begin to teach kids things that are valuable and helpful, like critical thinking and communication and leadership and personal development and entrepreneurship, the things that actually make one's world go round in a way that few other things can. If it's out there, I haven't found it. The things that I just described are the things that have made the biggest difference for me. Not learning how to multiply 3 by 3, which I happen to know the 9, but math was definitely not my subject, and neither was science. I got into this because I care about the education system, because I want to see it improve, because I want to see it change radically. How much can one person do? I don't know. How much can an entire group of people committed to the same project do? I don't know. But I think it is people like this that are standing up for what they believe is right and taking action and being in conversation about the things they care about that are ultimately changing the world. Those are the people that are making a difference. So that will be my reason for being there. Aside from that, there's absolutely no monetary reward or compensation. The best that I can expect, or the most I can expect out of this, is probably a juicy testimonial, which is not a bad thing, and maybe a few book reviews. I'll probably coax my leader into doing that. But outside of that, there's just not a whole lot I'm going to get out of this, right? And at this exact moment in time, this project is mostly revolving around creating an event. And this event isn't necessarily to alter the structure of the current traditional education system so much as providing support for parents, teachers, etc. Which is, again, still a worthy cause, but it's not anything, let's say, political. It's not anything at the provincial level or the federal level. Nothing's changing there. Nothing's being enacted there. I'll just put it like that. So those are my reasons for getting into the project now, for whatever reason. And as far as I'm concerned, we're in about week 3 or week 4. Apparently, according to our leader, we're into week 5. So I suppose, there's a little bit of a timeline there in terms of her getting her team together and setting up her structure of her projects and all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know. I went into this feeling pretty good, and then after a few meetings, kind of started to feel deflated, and oh no, is this going to be one of those? And at first I really just thought it was me, okay, maybe I'm just not looking at this correctly. Maybe I can lean on the other team members to help me complete what I need to do, because I'm a team lead in this project. Maybe I'm just not seeing everything holistically. And after, I guess, meeting number 3 or meeting number 4, other people are starting to complain and deciding to leave the project and no longer be a part of it. So I was like, oh, it's not just me. So there's something going on here. The well has been poisoned, to use the illustration from earlier. And one of the things that I can see about the project, and it's not necessarily totalistically the reason why it's going the way it's going, but we have another leader in there who's got a lot of rigor, wants to bring a lot of structure to the table. That's all fine, but there's no part of it that kind of strikes me or appears to be particularly fun. Like, let's check base camp every day. Yeah, sure. I'm not getting paid to do this, and I've already got projects, not to mention a contract, where this is kind of part of the daily routine of checking whatever software we're checking for projects and being on top of them and relaying information to team members and getting them onboarded onto these projects. So that's already part of my life, and do I really need one more thing to do at the end of the day or when I've completed my other projects? And it's just I'm not totally inspired by that. Again, I don't think necessarily that's the only reason why people are where they are, but at this point I'm just kind of speculating because I'm trying to figure out where the well was ultimately poisoned. But I can see that it's clearly not just me. And let's also acknowledge that a lot of people who are part of this project, in fact, most of the people who've chosen to be part of this project, have completed some pretty intensive personal development programs. So it's not like they haven't been subjected to the pain of certain types of projects and specifically projects that suck. They have. They've been there too. But for whatever reason, this is striking people as one of those. It's just oh God, really? We gotta get on this thing and do this thing? The other cause that I can see, at least, or potential cause anyway, is just that a lot of the weekly tasks are not well defined. So there's a lot of missing pieces as far as we need this to be able to do that. We need this piece of software to be able to execute this. We need to make sure this is registered online. So clearly the leader is not totally clear on the steps there, which is okay. It's not that necessarily their job to know everything, but also it would have been beneficial to take some time to break down these actions and tasks into smaller pieces that are manageable and relatively easy to do. Let's just assume to a degree at least that most people aren't going to give more than 20 minutes to half an hour of their day, especially if you're talking to people who are busy in their 30s, 40s, 50s, some with families. You can't ask people to do a whole lot more than that. And I'm not saying some won't, and I'm not saying some people aren't perhaps interested in learning new things or taking on more things, but I think it would just be a bad assumption on the part of the leader to say, well, these people are just, they're going to do whatever it takes, and they're going to spend 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day on my project. For me, at least, I'd be like, I think that's unreasonable. If there's a really good reason, like they love the project, or there's a financial incentive, or they're collaborating with me in some capacity, or they're becoming one of my partners or leaders in projects where we've got structures in place, and again, there's some kind of financial remuneration, I could see that. People giving a little bit more time, energy, effort, all that kind of thing, but pretty much not so much when you're talking on a volunteer basis and strictly you're depending on how inspired people are to work on the project. So those are the conditions. I also wanted to talk about what are your options? And I've already kind of communicated this to the leader. I stand by what Dan Kennedy said about clients, which is basically, if I wake up thinking about you more than 3 days in a row and I'm not sleeping with you, something is wrong and something is off. And Kennedy pretty much at that point says he fires his clients, right? And you would expect that from grumpy marketer Kennedy, right? But that's my philosophy too. And today was day number 1 of waking up, by the way, far too early, waking up thinking about this project, obsessing over it, when I should just be sleeping and resting and recovering and not concerning myself with the challenges, the inherent challenges that kind of plague us at this exact moment in time. But, somehow, some way, my mind's just this is not right, this is off, this is not working, and you're going to be on the hook if these things aren't done, So all of that was right there for me. Now, I've communicated this to the leader. I think the leader took it in good humor. We're at least trying to hammer out our steps forward and discussing the tasks that need to be done and the weekly actions such that they are broken down, they are reasonable. We're not trying to accomplish too much on any given week. So I think we're heading in the right direction, and I think this has the chance to turn out okay. We will see. We shall see if I end up waking up thinking about it more than one day. But I can honestly say I think whatever's happened kind of had to happen so that the team lead could kind of see for herself where some adjustments and course corrections need to be made. Is there a time to back out of projects? Obviously, I believe that because what I just said about Dan Kennedy's philosophy. If I wake up thinking about you more than 3 days in a row, we're not sleeping together, there's a problem here. There's something wrong. There's something off. So absolutely, there are times to back out. I think a lot of people will do this early and make pretty much any excuse they can come up with to get out of it as soon and as early as possible. Keep in mind, Most people who've been leaders for a while, most people who've worked with other people on various projects, kind of are able to read people when they're lying, and, they might let you get away with it. But bottom line, you are not making a deposit in that relationship. You're making a big withdrawal. And if you hope to maintain that relationship, and maybe you don't care in this exact moment, but it seems like people go through life, I've heard about it, or at least I've seen it enough to think that a lot of people go through life and regret not building more relationships and not having more friends in their golden years. There's going to be pros and cons to that, I think, because if you have more friends, you're also kind of signing up for mourning the loss of more friends, too. And that's rough. But at the very least, I think we can agree that coming to the golden years in your life without relationships and friendships and people that you can turn to is completely preventable by being in action about it in small ways every single day. So you got to think about that. If you're just like, oh yeah, no, like I'm washing my hair that week, and I'm not giving that if you're giving that as an excuse, I think you got bigger problems. But I'm just giving any old excuse will do if people are trying to get out of something as quickly and easily as possible. And I'm not saying this is a toxic environment necessarily, but obviously in a toxic environment, I think, let's just be real, you got to protect yourself, and that's a situation where you want to get out. But I'm not necessarily talking about the kind of projects that are toxic on that level. I'm really just talking about ones that they suck, right? So if you want to make a withdrawal in that relationship and possibly make it up to that person later, that is an option. I often chose the more difficult road, I have to admit, of just continuing on and slogging it out and trying to figure it out along the way. Another thing to think about is, consider that it is a matter of your character and a matter of your integrity. Now, we all say yes to stuff that we later say no to. This is human. And I don't think it's necessarily something to be, I don't think I need to be on your back about that necessarily and criticize you and go after you and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that needs to happen. But nevertheless, if you say yes to a project and you've committed to it, then it's still a matter of your character and your integrity. Character is sticking it out and doing what you said you were going to do, right? Under any condition is not necessarily part of that promise, but it is kind of, though. It's implied. If you were really to say, I'm going to be the kind of person who follows through and does what they say they're going to do, then I would say that, the conditions part is also somewhat implied, so it's something to think about. Yeah, I also kind of have come to that point of, I was told that kind of thing growing up. Was growing up in Japan, and I joined the basketball team, and it was like one of the worst decisions I ever made because the coach was quite verbally and physically and emotionally abusive. It seemed to me like he was completely reliant on people fearing him to get the job done that he needed to get done. Are there ways other than fear to get the job done? I really think so, but he leaned hard on fear to make people do what he thought they should do. That was his way. So I heard people say, especially in Japan, but let's face it, it does propagate in other areas too. I heard people say, that's just something that builds your character. But putting yourself in a situation intentionally that is clearly toxic and has the potential to escalate beyond what pretty much would be reasonable in terms of abuse, I don't think that's a situation where you want to stick around. And sometimes, me personally, I just don't know if there's a graceful exit. I like to make graceful exits when and where I can and just simply make people aware of what is not working for me. And sometimes, again, in a situation like this where the coach is like angry all the time and ruling the herd by fear, there's not a whole lot that you can give in terms of reason. You couldn't just go to them and say, it's awfully hostile environment around here, and I've seen you abuse other people, and you've also hit my head once or twice, so this doesn't work for me. Are you trying to invite more anger? Are you trying to invite more violence by saying this? Because I'm thinking that's about all you're going to get. So there are definitely situations where you've got to run away. But how much character that builds, I don't know. Because if you're traumatized, then you are left with physical symptoms or conditions, panic attacks, PTSD, whatever else you might be experiencing. They're going on the merry way with their life. They don't think about you. They don't care about you. The person who abused you, the person who scares you to death, they're not thinking about you anymore. But you could be dealing with PTSD years later. Is that fair? I don't think it is. So projects that suck. I'm not gonna wait and see. I'm gonna hang in there and see whether or not it's gonna be the kind of project where I'm waking up 3 days in a row going, yeah, this just isn't working for me. So I'd love to hear your experience with projects that suck. What sort of things have you taken on? How did you back out or bow out if that's something you did? Or if you did stick it through, what was your experience like? Was it worth it? Looking forward to your thoughts.
Unlock the secrets to skyrocketing your productivity, boosting performance, and maximizing profits with my latest premium guide, the Productivity, Performance, and Profits Black Book. Tailored for independent artists and entrepreneurs, this comprehensive resource is your roadmap to turning ideas into reality. Say goodbye to abandoned projects collecting dust on your shelves or buried in your hard drives. It's time to bring your vision to life. Grab your free copy of the Productivity, Performance, and Profits Black Book now at davidandrewweeb.com/blackbook. That's WIEBE. Don't miss out on the key to unlocking your success.